You just checked your phone, not because something happened, not because you were waiting for news. You checked it because your hand moved before you decided to move it. Because the pull is that strong now. Because somewhere between waking up and right now, the decision of where to put your attention stopped being yours. That is not a habit. That is a mechanism operating on you.
In 1883, Nietzsche described the end state of a civilization that had optimized for comfort over everything else. He called it the last man, the creature that blinks, that keeps warm, that has no appetite for difficulty, no hunger for greatness, no capacity to want something that costs something. He didn't have a smartphone. He didn't need one. He was describing the destination. Silicon Valley built the vehicle.
Here is what a dopamine loop actually is, not metaphorically, mechanically. Your brain releases dopamine in anticipation of reward, not at the reward itself, at the possibility of reward, the variable, the unpredictable, the scroll that might show you something significant, or might not. The engineers who designed your feed knew this. They studied it. They tested it. Slot machines use the same mechanism. The pull to refresh gesture was designed to feel identical to pulling a lever. The unpredictable reward interval, sometimes a good post, sometimes nothing, sometimes something that makes your stomach tighten, is the exact same structure that makes gambling addictive.
The difference is that gambling takes your money. This takes something harder to recover. It takes your directed attention, your capacity to sit inside a difficulty long enough to solve it, your tolerance for the tension that precedes creation, your appetite for the work that doesn't give you feedback for weeks. It takes your will to power, and it sells it back to you as content.
This is not a lecture about screen time. That framing is intentionally small. The actual diagnosis is this. You are being kept in a state of perpetual, comfortable exhaustion, not by accident, as a function of the system. A man who is slightly tired, slightly stimulated, and slightly entertained is not a man who builds anything threatening. He is not a man who accumulates the sustained attention necessary to become dangerous. He is not a man who sits alone with an uncomfortable idea long enough to turn it into something.
He is a man who generates engagement metrics. Nietzsche wrote in Beyond Good and Evil, "The herd animal wants one thing above all, that nothing about its existence remind it of what it is capable of." Every notification is designed to fulfill that want. Every recommendation algorithm exists to keep you moving, never resting long enough to feel the weight of your own unused potential.
That weight, when it arrives, is supposed to be productive. It is supposed to be the pressure that forces becoming. When it is permanently avoided, something specific happens to the man underneath it. He becomes manageable.
Here is the re-hook, the part most people are not told. What is actually being harvested is not your time, not your money, not even your attention in the crude sense. What is being harvested is your threshold for meaningful difficulty. Every hour you spend in low-friction stimulation lowers the activation energy required to keep you there and raises the activation energy required to begin anything that demands you. The reading that asks you to hold a concept, the project that won't give you feedback for weeks, the relationship conversation you've been restructuring in your head but not having, the work that requires you to be bad at something before you get better. The cage is not the phone.
The cage is the recalibrated nervous system that now experiences real work as unbearably effortful, and the feed as the default state of rest. That recalibration was not done to you by an enemy. It was done by an optimization function that has no ideology. It simply found the most effective path to your continued presence on the platform, and that path ran directly through your ambition.
Nietzsche's will to power is not about domination. It is the drive in every living thing to overcome its current state and press toward more. The Dionysian says yes to life, including its suffering. You cannot have great joy without the capacity for great pain. You cannot have genuine creation without the risk of failure.
The digital system is a Dionysian castration machine. It removes the suffering. It removes the failure. It removes the friction. It replaces all of it with stimulation that mimics engagement while delivering none of its products. You feel like you've been somewhere. You have been nowhere. You feel like something happened. Nothing happened to you. Something happened to your metrics.
The last man, Nietzsche wrote, blinks. He has invented happiness. He has no appetite for the conditions that produce it. The phone didn't create the last man. It perfected him. 3 signs you are already domesticated. First, you cannot read for 40 minutes without checking your phone. Not because you lack discipline, because your attention span has been reshaped to the dimensions of a notification. Second, the idea of a day without your phone produces anxiety before it produces clarity. The anxiety is the cage recognizing the threat of open space. Third, your most creative hours, the early morning, the late night, the gaps between obligations, are being consumed by the feed. Not because the feed is giving you anything, because the alternative, sitting with yourself and your unused potential, has become the harder option. The exit Nietzsche describes is not a digital detox. It is not a screen time limit. It is not a productivity system. It is the deliberate reclamation of difficulty as the condition of your becoming. It is the choice, made every morning before the phone is checked, to place one demand on yourself that the algorithm cannot satisfy. 1 hour, 1 project, 1 sustained engagement with something that gives you nothing immediately and asks everything from you consistently. Not because it is virtuous, because it is the only mechanism that regenerates what the system is designed to consume. The phone will be there when the hour ends. The version of you that could have been built in that hour will not. Nietzsche's last man blinks and calls it happiness. The question is whether you have decided to be him, or whether that decision is still available to you. Tomorrow morning it is. The morning after that, it may not be. Choose before you check.